This week we're looking at an event in Jesus' life where he comes face to face with someone who thought he was smarter or knew better than Jesus did. In other words, Jesus comes up against opposition. In this case, it's an expert in the law, a religious lawyer, who poses a question to test Jesus. The question is straightforward enough: what must I do to inherit eternal life? But the answer that Jesus gives surprises the expert in the law. This is the time where Jesus teaches this expert in the law the impossibility of earning eternal life. If you haven't already, pause the video and read Luke chapter 10 verses 25 to 37. You might find it helpful to read the story in a traditional translation, like the NIV, and the Message translation, to give you a different perspective. Have you ever asked yourself the question, how much is enough? How much money do I have to give before I'm considered generous? How much time do I have to put in before I'm considered attentive? How much practice do I have to do before I'm considered a proficient? I'll be honest with you, I'm no stranger to questions like that. I, like many of you, have been brought up in a worldview stating that I should consider myself the most important person. I should consider myself before other people. The truth is, however, that if we were actually to ask a truly generous, a truly attentive, or a truly proficient person how much is enough, I think they would say, first of all, we're asking the wrong question. And also, in asking that question, we put our hearts on show. We show that actually we're not interested in becoming generous or attentive or proficient. We're more interested in ourselves. In the story today, we find an expert of the law testing Jesus about how to gain full and everlasting life. Jesus, being Jesus, knows it's a test, and so puts the question back on him. Well, you're an expert of the law. What does it say? The expert dutifully dictates his memory verse to Jesus. He answers, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbour as yourself." And Jesus says, "Well done, I agree. Do that, and you'll live." Now let me ask you, how many of you have ever successfully loved God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength? And if you have, how long have you kept it up for? How many of you have loved your neighbour as yourself? And again, if you have, how consistent are you at it? You see, to the expert of religious law, this is all about performance. What must I do to inherit eternal life? In other words, he's asking, how do I earn eternal life? How much do I have to do to get it? But by asking that question, he shows just how ignorant he is of the fact that you can't earn something like that. That he, like everyone else, falls so far short of the religious standards that are required. Now, the expert at this point knows that he's in a bit of trouble. And so he poses a second question to Jesus. He says, "Who is my neighbour?" He's trying to do damage control. He's trying to limit how much he now has to do. And Jesus goes on to tell the parable of the Good Samaritan, where one of the Jews' most hated enemies comes to the rescue of this man that has been beaten up, robbed, and left to die. But in order to understand this parable more fully, I think there are some cultural and geographical points of information that are important to know. Number one, the route described here between Jerusalem and Jericho is about 18 miles long. This route is a barren area between 2 points. Desert-like terrain without easily accessible food and water, and exposed to the elements. If you were attacked here and unable to move, you were in serious trouble. Secondly, the road between Jerusalem and Jericho had a reputation. It was known locally as the Way of Blood due to how often people ended up beaten up, robbed, and left to die. This would not have been lost on the listeners. Thirdly, the road in this story is not what you might think of. When you and I think of a road, we might think of a single or multi-lane strip of tarmac, often with pavements on either side. And so when we are presented with the image of a priest crossing over, we imagine he moved from one pavement to the other. But here the road is more like a line of very small goat track in the mountain. So when Jesus says the priest crossed over to the other side, I think he's being sarcastic. The priest and the Levi would have had to have literally left the path or stepped over the dying, bleeding man. Finally, in the Jewish community, there would have been an acceptable social order. At the top, you had priests, closely followed by Levites, a sort of second-level priest. And at the bottom, you would have had your Jewish layman or woman, ordinary members of the public. A Samaritan, however, was considered not only an outsider, but more so a mortal enemy to the Jews. It is hard to put into words or give a suitable modern example of how little Samaritans were liked or accepted. But suffice to say, it would have been considered outrageous that he should have been the hero of Jesus' story. Now that you know these things, read this passage again. What stands out to you? What stands out to me is this question of enough. How much is enough? When I look at the example of the Samaritan, I see someone who was hated and sneered at by the Jews. And yet he was the only one of the three who was merciful, who had pity, and went to the aid of this man who had been beaten and left to die. Not only that, but I see the extravagance of his love for the broken man. He pauses his journey. He tends to the man's wounds, using his own provisions. He lets the man ride his donkey while he walks. He books the man into a hotel and gives him medical attention. He pays the equivalent of 2 days' wages for a labourer in order to put the man up in the inn. And beyond that, he offers to pay any outstanding bills on his return. Not once does he say, how much is this going to cost me? Or how much time is this going to demand? This is a heart of love on display for us all to see. Amazing, isn't it? The generosity, mercy, and extravagance of this Samaritan. Jesus concludes his story by asking a question back at the expert. Which one of these was a neighbour to the man in need? The answer is reluctantly given. The one who had mercy on him. Are you and I asking the right questions in our lives? If we're asking how much money, how much time, how much practice, then we're probably asking the wrong question. I want my heart to become more like this Samaritan, who was extravagant in his love for a neighbour. I want to be like the one who had mercy on him. Hey everyone, thanks for watching the video this week. If you enjoy the content that we're uploading, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and then you'll be informed of any new content that we upload in the future. See you next time.